Folks, if you know me, you know I'm a Power Rangers geek, a Power Rangers maniac. I love them so much. And that's one of the reasons I'm so excited to talk to my guest today. He's a journalist based out of Lexington, Kentucky, and his latest book, Morphenomenal: How the Power Rangers Conquered the World, is available for order now. It comes out this month. Joshua Moore is here. Josh, how are you?
I'm fabulous, Rob. I can't appreciate you enough for having me on the show. It's exciting to talk to anybody about this book and always exciting to talk about Power Rangers with anybody.
There you go, my man. There you go. Okay. So, Josh, I think like most people in this world, you're younger than I am. So the show did Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. The show premieres on I think it's August 28th, 1993. And you're two at the time?
Yes, sir. It's funny because people ask me all the time, have you been a fan for your whole life and or since the show started? And I tell them yes, because my mom's told me that my whole life. I don't remember what I was doing when I was two. I was, hopefully just trying to figure out how to use the bathroom without a diaper. So that's what she tells me. So I take her at her word.
There you go. So was it just one of those things where the show was on in the background and you saw it and it caught your attention and you just kind of stayed with it?
Yeah, it had to. I think it had to probably be something like that. And my first memories, the first memories that I can recall myself without the aid of a parent is, really with the show around the Turbo in Space era, as that era sort of,
Yeah.
started
That
airing.
1997,
Mhm.
1998 time frame.
And then, and at that same time, the Power Rangers playback where they aired the reruns of Mighty Morphin and stuff. So that was as much my Power Rangers as Turbo and In Space and that team, except I was sort of getting them at the same time. And I did,
Yeah.
I did at least remember enough from when I was a little kid to know that Mighty Morphin led into what I was watching at the time, Turbo and stuff. So I was at least cognizant enough of that. And I think a lot of that was also aided. I mean, we had the VHS tapes of Day of the Dumpster, Happy
Mm.
Birthday Zach. A few of those original tapes were just staples in our house. I can't tell you how many times. Rocky Just Wants to Have Fun. That was another one that I
Oh
watched
gosh.
watched the hell out of when I was a kid. So
Man, oh, man. So, and I mean, as you grow up, I mean, was it one of those things, and I can relate to this, that you just never grew out of? Did it just sort of stay with you?
absolutely, and I think that's it's I'm so glad you frame it that way because I do think for a lot of Power Rangers fans, they go through a period where you know they're shy about it or they kind of want to they think it's for babies or whatever it might be. I was always the loud and proud Power Rangers fan at my school and in my I'm from a rural Eastern Kentucky town, so it's like if someone makes fun of you or whatever, it's like whatever, like they're you just poke it right back at them. That's kind
Hmm.
of how I was raised, so I was always a big Power Rangers fan and finally met some of my people by the time I finally got to high school, because there were like two middle schools in my county and we're divided by a hill, so I never met any of these people until I was in high school, and I finally
Nice.
met my people by the time I was in high school. So many of my friends I met late in life in my high school years, and
Yeah.
they love Power Rangers, they love Yu-Gi-Oh, Digimon, all the geeky stuff that I was into, so and still am.
Oh
So
man, I'm jealous. I wish I had a Power Rangers posse when I was in high school. Okay, but nowadays you are a journalist based out of Lexington, Kentucky, or the Lexington area, I guess. So how does the book come about? How does a Power Rangers? I mean, obviously you're a fan, but what's the genesis of the project?
yeah, it's something that originates in the summer of 2021. So COVID times,
Hmm.
is what that was a blast in 2020. We get through that. We get through about a year plus of that, and some friends and I, my now wife, we weren't even engaged yet at the time, I don't think, but or we were getting towards engagement. So
Okay.
we and two other couples went to Florida in 2021. A year into it, things are kind of easing up a little bit, get more comfortable with travel and that kind of thing. So we go to Florida for a week. I always take books when I go to the beach. I get I beach read,
Yeah.
and one of the books was it's called Answers in the Form of Questions by
Okay.
Claire McNear. She's a journalist for The Ringer, um, entertainment journalist, and it's about Jeopardy. So it's kind of like a history of Jeopardy. So I'm about halfway through it and I'm thinking, why doesn't this exist for Power Rangers? this is a
Mm-hmm.
show with, at that time, it's 2 years away from its 30th anniversary. It's
Right.
just this crazy phenomenon that has lasted for such a long time. And
Mm-hmm.
so I start researching and doing stuff. Initially I start listening to some interviews and podcasts and YouTube shows and things like that Claire was on. And through that, I started picking up some people that she, you know, talked to that kind of educated about this stuff, like kind of how to pitch a book, how to do things. And they were entertainment journalists. People like one of the women was, her name's Jennifer K. Armstrong. She wrote Seinfeldia, which is basically what the easiest way to describe what my book is it's Seinfeldia for Power Rangers. Like that's really
Okay. Fair enough.
that was my goal. I don't think it will be as successful. Her book is a New York Times bestseller, so
Well,
who
hey,
knows?
don't jinx it, my friend. Don't jinx
but
it.
Incredible resources, just some of the podcasts and things and some of the she had a book that it was like a $5 book. It's the best investment I made through this whole process was like basically how to put together a book proposal for a book like this. Best
Nice.
$5 I've ever spent in my life. And
Nice.
so from there
So
I
then
start.
go ahead. Sorry.
No, yeah, you're good. From there I start building a proposal and pitching to agents, and that took 18 months, basically that whole process, putting the proposal together and then starting the pitch. And by the time February 23 runs around, my wife is 3 months pregnant. I'm sitting there thinking, okay, I need to sit on this for a minute and focus on being a dad. It's
Yeah.
my first kid. And of course, so I sent out one last round and say, okay, like that's it. 45 minutes later, guy becomes my agent. I mean, it's like I sent out hundreds, probably thousands of
Wow.
emails over the course of 18 months. And the last one, when I'm ready to kind of just hang it up for a minute, is the one that gets you. I mean, it's serendipity. It's just, you can't
Yeah.
make it up, and then that leads to a book deal and a small publisher that believes in it. And couldn't be more excited to. And in terms of just like why I wanted to write it, it's like, it should exist. It's a book about
Yeah.
my favorite TV
Absolutely.
show. I'm a journalist. I know what I'm doing. I know how to research. I know how to figure out how to contact people that need to be talked to for something like this. And so I think it's just a matter of marrying my passion for the show and my passion for journalism and writing and telling the Power Ranger story the way it should be told for fans like yourself and fans like it's a book. I wanted to write a book that I wanted to read. And I
I
think
was
I've
gonna
done
say,
that.
yeah. What's the wife think of the Power Rangers project?
She
If I can
so
ask.
she was a it's funny, she's a fan, more she's just kind of she in the OG era. She was kind of like, like she goes, we're the same. So I'm 34, she's 33, so we were both in that same time frame. But
Mm-hmm.
her younger brother is a big Power Rangers fan, so she was around it. She was familiar with it. And we knew each other from high school. We
Okay.
we reconnected later in life, but we went to the same
Yeah.
high school. And so she knew, I was a big nerd and a big, and she is too. She's got her own. She owns The Legend of Zelda is like her number one
Okay.
passion. In terms of the working on it, though, I mean, it was tough. It was something that she is the biggest trooper and supporter in the world, because there's no way I could have done this without her really shouldering a lot more than she was already shouldering in terms of especially those first few months when our
Oh
son was
yeah.
born.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I
And
can only
it's
imagine.
something, yeah, it's tough. And it's and funny, his name is Jason, so I think it's not hard to draw the lines of, oh, he's named after a Red Ranger, and he's named
Jason, the
after,
original Red Ranger.
yeah, and Jason Frank. It's kind of a dual name, but
Oh, there you go.
but what you wouldn't know is she's the one who wanted that. I wasn't the one who was lobbying for it to be named after her. She was the one that was like that wanted to do that. So I think for her is a
Wow.
little bit for me, wanting to do that. And but that was pretty cool.
Awesome. So you interviewed, was it more than 100 people for the book?
Yeah, I think the
And so
final.
how long does it take you to do that? How long does it take you to write a book like this, the Seinfeldia for Power Rangers? How long does that take?
It so while I'm pitching the book, I interviewed about 10 to 15 people through before I actually had a deal in place, to
Yeah.
enough to gather and kind of demonstrate that, like, okay, I can do this. Like, if you
Yeah.
will sign me, I can do this. I'm capable of doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Then from there, so from the time so I signed the ink was dry in May of 23 with
Okay.
Applause Books, my publisher,
Yep.
and then I had to do the book was due in April of 24, my manuscript.
Wow.
So from that point, at that point, I'd written probably about 15,000 to 20,000 words of what became a 90. The final book's about 92, 93,000 words. So
Wow. Okay.
I had a year to write, say, about 70,000 words, and
Okay.
I I interviewed most of those 100. I think it's about 115, 117, something like that, people in that 11 months, and like and most of the book itself was written between November and January of like November 23 and January 24, and then I got it into the hands of some beta readers by February of 24. And so it's funny when you think, because you think, oh, I have all this time, but not really. Like, it was really like, the book was really most of it before edits and stuff, and that's a pretty lengthy process. But most of the initial draft of the manuscript was written in about 2 months, after 3 years of research. It's like, so that's all work that goes into it too. But it's a pretty monumental task, and something that was, I love interviewing people. That's my favorite thing about anything I'm doing, whether it's a single interview feature or something like this. The interviewing part is the best thing, and then the challenge is like, what do you use and what do you leave out? And
I imagine there's a lot on the proverbial cutting room floor here.
Absolutely, and that's something I want to do. That's something I want to like share that with people, in some form. I'm still figuring that out a little bit, but there's so much that's it needs to be shared in some way.
So who are you talking to? Are you talking to like cast, crew, fans? Who's on the interview list?
Yeah, the list. So when I first put together the list, it's like 400 deep. Just basically anybody that's ever touched Power Rangers. Obviously, a ton of those people that you will never talk. Like Ham Saban, I knocked on that door 50 times. Never, I knew that was never going to happen. But you do your due diligence. Crew, producers from Chip Lynn, Jackie Marchand, and Ryder. They're two of the most instrumental people in the show for a decade plus. Up to the very end of the show with Simon Bennett, Alwyn Dale, Becca Barnes, the last crew that kind of handled the writing of the show, and then everyone in between, actors, not as many actors as you might think for something like this, because one, most of them, their agents, they want money for interviews, and that's not something as a journalist I'm willing to ever do, and especially for a project like this, where to me the ultimate sign of the book's integrity is the fact that it's all done in a true journalistic fashion. I'm not skirting over controversies. I'm not, I'm going at it from as objective as a fan can be. I love the show, so I'm seriously, I'm obviously subjective about some things about the show, but you try to approach it with seriousness, and for me that doesn't, exchange of money completely corrupts that. So, and that's fine. I respect that people ask too, though. It's not like I'm like clowning on those people, but they want their money. It's their time. I get it. So, but there's a few actors. It's ton of writers. I mean, and to me, the writers, that's really where so much of the meat of the stories come from anyway, just because they kind of touch everything. And especially in Power Rangers, because so often they're involved on the production side too. And in crew, like random crew. I mean, one of the people that was really fun to talk to that I just kind of did on a whim, because I noticed his name along the way, was Alonzo Bowden. He's a comedian. You might be familiar with him. He's not like a big name, but he was like the last comic standing. He's been around. He's enough of a name that he's been on like shows you've heard of. Would be the way I would
it
put
rings a bell.
He was a grip and like a truck driver early on in the show, and somebody that caught my eye, like that was something that I was like, what, I'll try to see if I can get a hold of him and just see if he has any interesting stories. And he was a pretty interesting interview. So guys like that, people that are just, because at that point, I mean, now if you say like Alonzo Bowden, he's probably, other than like a handful of cast members, he's probably the most famous people attached to, that a average Joe would know if you said the name. But back in the day, he was just a truck. I mean, nobody knew who he was. So
it's just a guy. So what was as somebody who's been a lifelong fan of the show and the franchise and its various incarnations, because I mean, the show, no pun intended, it started to morph on a yearly basis as it continued. So it would kind of do a soft reboot virtually every year. But I mean, as somebody who's been a fan throughout the various incarnations of the show, I mean, what was something, or was there anything that you learned in the process of writing the book? I mean, that even a diehard fan such as yourself didn't know.
I learned a lot. You know, I don't know if I learned as much as I gained a deeper appreciation for some of the things that I did know, or like,
Okay.
or maybe like just an extra layer beyond maybe what I knew in terms
Okay.
of just the way the show is made. I mean, I think anybody that is connected to the show or followed it on the internet, you knows that it's a very curiously put together product.
Uh-huh.
And so just getting to talk to people, like the people who logged the footage and the people who um like the original Japanese footage. I guess one thing I kind of learned, or I knew, but like I had never really talked to someone about it, was the original footage for Jew Ranger, that for the first season that comes across.
The
It
show
was
that
like,
Mighty Morphin was based on.
it was kind of in an unusable form the way it was delivered originally for when they were cutting it together. So they had to take the tapes that it was delivered on and then record them to film and then splice it together, and then put it back together. And the fact that show, like, that made me like, the fact that Mighty Morphin looks as good as it does, given
Hmm.
some of the things that they were doing to that footage to try to make it usable. It made me like, now when I watch Mighty Morphin, because obviously, like the American footage and the
Yeah.
Japanese footage looks different,
Yeah.
but it doesn't look bad. Like, it doesn't
No.
look like it's been chopped up in a, like, mercilessly chopped pieces. And that's
Right.
a testament to how good the editing was on that show. And
Yeah.
really throughout its entire time, the editing of Power Rangers throughout its 30-year history is something that and they honestly, they should have won Emmy awards for it, because it's such a unique beast to have to tackle. And so much of the show, you can argue, and one of the editors I spoke to did argue this, that the show is in some ways, the editor is the most important person on that show. And
Yeah.
you might talk to a lot of editors on a lot of shows that might think that's the case, but I think on Power Rangers, they may have a legitimate case that's
I was going to say they have such an integral job as far as, what connects to what. And I mean, but you're right. No, it's not like especially season one, it's not like the show looks like it's held together with popsicle sticks and
mm-hmm.
chewing gum or anything. I mean, it's about as seamless as it could be.
Yeah, and it's like, it's again, it's amazing that because they would like zoom in, they would doing things with the footage, like to make it to where you didn't, like, there were like visible like cuts in the film that they were sent. And it was just like, I mean, it sounds like it was a disaster what like that first batch, because it's like, because no one knows,
Yeah.
like, and then at some point Toei kind of gets into once they know they have this cash cow in America that's making their footage extra money, they take more care of it, and along the way it becomes easier. But that first couple batches, it was something that sounds like it was incredibly harrowing, having to deal with a lot of that footage early on.
I believe it. I believe it. Do you have a favorite season of the show? Is that like asking you to make a torturous decision?
No, I love Time Force. That's been
Time
my favorite
Force.
season for a long time. And I mean, I pretty much, there's things I like and appreciate about every season of the show, but Time Force for me, its themes, the Destiny thing, that's something that's always kind of resonated with me. I didn't have a bad childhood by any means, but like I had a childhood that led me to like wanting to do my own things and kind
Yeah.
of carve out my own path. And I think that was something that, so it timed out nicely that by the time that I could start interacting with media in a way that I could remember it and actually take things away from it, that Time Force was the season of Power Rangers that came
Hmm.
along. It was,
Time
I
Force.
think
That's
it,
the 2001 incarnation
mhm,
of the show.
yep. And it's, and just that time period, as a kid of that age, I was 10, 9/11, the terrorist attacks happened. And that's something that
Yeah.
obviously changes everyone's lives. And as a child who didn't, I didn't get to experience what it was like to fly before that, and things like that. So it's, it really, I think that's a very impactful time for everybody of my age or my generation for sure, and yours too. You're joking, you're going on about your age. You don't look that old, bro. Um, we
Well, I appreciate that.
so Time Force is that for me, and really that whole era though, that original Saban Entertainment area. It's just such a that that stretch of the show is just so it's so unique. It's the end of network TV, tell kids TV on network broadcast is such a.
You're
I
talking
think
like
that's
from like the original 1993 until like Disney buys the show in I
yeah.
think 2002. Okay.
Because it's sort of this time capsule of what TV used to be like. When you come home and flip on the TV and there's TV on your four channels. It's kind of like, I sound like an old man because we had some cable, but like it was still like nascent cable. Cable, I think, and now cable is like no one cares about cable now. So it's been cool to it has been cool to see the evolution of TV. And for me, that really is Power Rangers. The story of Power Rangers is the story of the evolution of TV, because there aren't many shows that have stood the test of time and the changes that have occurred in television, especially in children's television. Really Sesame Street's it's Power Rangers and Sesame Street. Very, very, very similar shows.
No, absolutely. No, I was going to say, it's a product of it, especially when you talk about the early incarnations of the show. It's a product of its time, but it stands the test of time. Is that a fair statement?
I think so. I think, because they, and especially when you like the fashion, the things like the real surface level things, like every season is reflective of the time it was made, and in a good way. I think that's fun, and I think that's another thing that makes Power Rangers. The further we get, especially from those early seasons, the more rich they almost become, because they do kind of become these windows into, they're campy, and the nostalgia is part of it. But I think if you're a kid now who stumbles into Power Rangers and you think it's neat, you start looking at it through like, wow, like my dad was wearing that, or like and that, like it's kind of like it becomes
like
it becomes something that it becomes a historical banquet. It is for kids to watch, and I think what I love, one thing that in terms of withstanding the test of time that's really cool about Power Rangers is you can watch that show, and even though it looks old and it's dated, but you can watch an episode of Mighty Morphin, Zeo, Turbo, and it's still very much like a good TV show for kids. Like, and they're not, they do a really good job, really, of not like culturally dating themselves. Like they're not dropping references to things that like in the like not very often, at least. Like other 90s shows, like 90s cartoons. One thing that's hard for me, I love a lot of 90s cartoons, but you start catching more of the references and things, and it just makes me wonder, like long term, how might something like Rugrats hold up to a kid? It will always have a place for adults, but and actually it becomes in some ways better. It kind of ages like a wine that way for an adult. But like if you're a kid watching Rugrats in say 2055, it might be a little harder to ingest it. And rather like a Power Rangers is gonna. It's going to age a lot differently, or it's not going to age as much for a child, down the road.
So, okay, we talked about the original Saban era, as it's called among fans, but in 2000, it's either 2002 or 2003, something happens with the country of New Zealand. And I saw you mention on social media that one of the things you wanted to get across with this book is how important the New Zealand connection is. What is that New Zealand connection with Power Rangers, and why is it so important?
Absolutely. I'm so glad you wanted to ask about this, because so for most people probably don't know that at this, like a lot of people maybe don't know that Disney did own Power Rangers for almost a decade. They purchased the Fox Family channel, the cable network, and as part of that purchase, that's how they end up with Power Rangers. So from there, they take it, they produced the season for 1 year, Wild Force, in Los Angeles, which is where the show was made for its first iteration for a long time. From there,
Hmm.
they sort of readjust and they reevaluate the economics of how the show is made and decide they pin it. They finally land on New Zealand as a place where they can go. At the it's worth noting, like that's where the Lord of the Rings films were being filmed there at that time.
Right.
It's
Hmm.
the country was starting to become, the buzz was growing that New Zealand is like this untapped resource. Xena the Warrior Princess had filmed there. That was like kind of the first action
Yeah.
type show that led Lord of the Rings there. Even so, you end up in New Zealand, and that's where Power Rangers until the show was I say canceled. It's weird to say cancel. I mean, that's I guess the word you would use though in
The most
2023.
recent incarnation wrapped up.
Right? Yeah. Um, uh, from the production of the 2023 season Ninja Storm up until the 2023 season Cosmic Fury, 20 years
Yeah. From
is all in New
2003 to
Zealand.
2023.
Yep. It's all in New Zealand. Some of the writers, some of the writing team was still based in Los Angeles. It's during points of that, but for the most part, it was made in New Zealand and
Hmm.
crafted in New Zealand. And just it's just so important for that to be written about and documented and recognized because I've never been to New Zealand. I don't have any connection to New Zealand other than the people that I've talked to for the book that live there and work there. But I think it's a bigger part of Power Rangers, like the full history of Power Rangers, than anything that happened in Los Angeles, just because of how long it was there,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
so many great seasons. I mean, and this is we're just getting in subjective territory, but there's a ton of fantastic seasons that were made in the New Zealand, and it really it opened up new environments for the show to be filmed in, and you can tell, like you can see the difference in some of the environment. Like there's a marked difference. I'm not saying it's a good or bad difference, but you
Right.
can tell a difference.
Yeah.
And I think it brings you a little closer in some ways to Japan too, because the Toei, they start using that crew to do some of their stuff for Super Sentai at
Hmm.
times because of it just becomes a little easier
Yeah.
to communicate. So it's a important it's the most, in some ways, the most important character in the Power Rangers story, and the fact that you know and the economic impact it had for that
Right.
country too. It's a very small film industry down there, and Power Rangers was like the constant, consistent source
Hmm.
of there's people who worked on Lord of the Rings who worked on Power Rangers. Like it's like and like like down the totem pole. Peter
Yeah.
Jackson wasn't swooping in and
Right.
directing an episode here or there, um but it just the fact that it touched, I mean, it some probably anybody that's ever done something in the New Zealand film industry either touched or was affected by the fact that Power Rangers was there. And so the fact that it's gone and really left a hole in that country, economically, is something that I wanted to highlight. I just think it's important, and it's I can't give them jobs and I can't give them
Right.
money, but I can give them this, this
Yeah.
item that says, hey, you matter.
It's tribute to them. So okay, so we mentioned that Cosmic Fury, Power Rangers Cosmic Fury, the 30th season, for now is the last season of the show. The show has ceased production in New Zealand, but there's been all kinds of buzz. We've heard stuff about Netflix. The most recent thing is we've heard something about Disney Plus doing something with the license. As a fan, for you, like in a perfect world, what would you like to see with the Power Rangers franchise? Where, if you've got, if a genie comes out of the lamp or the genie monster from the first season of the show, would you, what do you wish for the future of the show?
That's a deep cut right there with the Genie Monster,
There
which is Genie Monster. It doesn't have a name. It is Genie Monster.
you go.
um, Honestly, in a perfect world, my number one wish from the Genie Monster would be a sequel to the 2017 movie. I really enjoyed that movie,
Wow.
and that cast. I think that cast, like to me, that was, I mean, especially when you see like they are all fantastic actors who've continued working and doing incredible stuff in Hollywood, or in Becky G's case, music.
Yeah.
But outside of that, which is maybe even a genie couldn't make that wish come true at this point. I'm interested in the Disney Plus thing because I've not watched the Percy Jackson show, but those are the showrunners that have been
Yeah.
reported to be involved with that, and that show had a lot of good buzz, and it's actually people don't talk about this. That show is, outside of a couple of the Marvel shows and The Mandalorian, that's been the biggest thing that's hit Disney Plus. Which says
Okay.
it says a couple things to me. One, it says like, you know, one thing that Power Rangers struggles with, I think, is it's tough bridging that nostalgia and like the new thing. It works so
Yeah.
well for the new thing and the refresh because you're hitting little kids and you're kind of refreshing every year. You're bringing in a new audience, but you're not building up
Yeah.
that continuity. So I think for a new show, you have to be wary of the who you're trying to grab. And I think if you're going for like
Hmm.
a young adult or preteen type audience, I think honestly I do think this Disney Plus show, given the showrunners involved, it I would imagine it would probably lean, even though it's not really Disney producing it, it would, they're
Right.
co-developing it with Hasbro 20th Century TV. I do think it would probably end up though, probably vibe wise, being close to like your Dino Thunders, your Ninja
Yeah.
Storms, like just in maybe slightly older than that. Um,
Okay.
but I do think because that era of the show, Disney was trying to do that. Like you could
Yeah.
tell,
Hmm.
it didn't work. Is now the time though that could work? And I think that's the question that we might see answered. So I'm excited for whatever comes. And honestly, if nothing comes, I'm also like Power Rangers had a fantastic run.
Yes.
If it never had another episode produced, I mean, we got a lot.
Hmm.
we got a
30
lot,
years.
and there's a lot to love, and there's so many things that have dedicated fandoms that don't get a fifth of what Power Ranger got in terms of
Hmm.
episode count. And so I think I try to keep that in mind too, that we got
Yeah.
comics and movies and video games. I mean, I could never I could eat sleep Power Rangers until the day I die, and be totally satisfied without anything new. That said, I would love a new
Naturally.
show.
Yeah, I was gonna say yeah, me as well. Okay, so what do you hope that people take away from the book? I mean, what would you have them thinking about when they close it?
My number one thing is I think there's sometimes this seed of like self-doubt or inferiority that comes with being a Power Rangers fan, and I think some of
Mm,
that's like been heightened because like the Marvel stuff has been so big. Star Wars is this massive fandom. Like I think we're always kind of constantly comparing ourselves to these things that
yeah,
just are bigger. Um,
yeah,
I want people to read this book and be informed, maybe learn some things they didn't learn, be entertained, love the story, because that's, like I said, I wanted to write the book that I would want to read if I was a Power Rangers fan. But I want you to leave my book being proud, like being more proud than you were being a Power Rangers fan, because we should be proud of this show and the things it stands for and the things that it does for people. And people, especially people who are from minority communities and ostracized groups of people that want to feel represented. I think that's something that Power Rangers have done
yeah,
so well for so long, and intentionally, but also not intentionally. It just kind of is baked into the fabric of what the show is, and I think that's special. And I think people should be proud of that. And if someone's, especially if you're a kid, if you're a young person and you're feeling a little less than because or somebody picks on you for liking Power Rangers, show them this book and then slap them upside the head with it if you have to.
there you go. There you go.